Hi everyone, Queeveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the moon. We are coming up to the full moon for the month of July, so we're going to take a look at how the moon is going to behave from here to the end of the month. As some of you may remember, I am hoping to do a question and answer video. I haven't gotten too many questions, so I'm going to leave them build up. I'll wait until I have a reasonable number of questions before I make any sort of question and answer video. But for those of you who are waiting for that, of course, feel free to ask more questions as I do need more of them. We're taking a look here at the full moon on the 10th of July, just after 11 o'clock when it's risen here in Ireland, and you can see it has this nice kind of orangey off-white colour. That's because we're seeing it at sunset. We can see as we push later in the night it gets back to this greyish white colour that we're used to seeing the moon as. But if you do catch a moon, especially a full moon, rising just as the sun is setting, it's very likely to have this nice orangey yellow colour. This is often called a harvest moon, but that can happen at any time of the year. It's not specifically related to harvests or any sort of harvest. The full moon is going to be reaching its highest just about there at just about here. We're coming up to 22:02 in the morning, and we're after moving into the 11th of July. We can see here the moon is 99.8% full, so we'll see if we hit 99.9 at any part of the night, but of course we may not, and we may not hit 100. No, we go down to 99.7%. so we're not seeing the moon directly above the south when we may expect to in the exact middle of the night. We can see here nearly 2 o'clock. That's definitely not a physical midnight or midnight on the clock. If we move back a little bit, we'll come close to the physical midnight, which is the opposite of the physical midday. Due to daylight savings and the time zones, when physical midday and physical midnight happen do vary. But we can see that the moon hasn't reached due south at physical midnight as it would if it were 100% full, if it was right in the middle of its phases, of its age. We can push back here and we'll see that it's still just 99.8% full. So for some part of the world, when the moon really is 100% full, and it won't be that for anywhere in Ireland, it's not up at the right time, but for some other part of the world, the moon will be directly above the south when we reach physical midnight. The moon is, of course, moving around us reasonably quickly. It only takes a month for the moon to get the whole way around the Earth. So the sun coming to its position of physical midday, that's a lot more reliable. We can see the moon coming close to what you may call upright, the upright position here at around 1:30. And it does usually look like this when it's close to midnight. We often see the moon looking like this in images and pictures because we're seeing the moon at its highest, often in the winter when it's at its fullest, so it's going to look something like this. We can see as the moon is rising and setting, it does look a little bit different, and of course from different latitudes the moon would look very different. If we were down in the southern hemisphere, then we'd see the moon completely upside down, we'd see it inverted. We're not really seeing too much change as we go from sunset to sunrise there, but of course the night is very short still, the moon is very low in the sky, so we're not seeing the moon move across as much of the sky. So we're not seeing as much of that twisting, that side to side rotation as we would do in the winter. We'll take another slightly closer look. I'll point it out again for anyone who is new enough to my channel that I haven't said this in a while, so perhaps it bears saying again. This is the Sea of Tranquility just over here. A lot of people imagine a face when they look at the moon. I often imagine or point out a football player. This is the head, this is the body, Down here are the two legs, and over here is the football. So the body of the football player is the Sea of Tranquility. Before laparoscopic surgeries, if you got your appendix out, the scar would be pretty close to being over the location of your appendix, which is usually on the right side. So the mirror's image here, if this football player was facing you and they had an appendix scar, it's around here. It's over on this left-hand side. That is where the Eagle landed. The Apollo 11 moon landing occurred in the Sea of Tranquility, but specifically down around this region, reasonably close to the edge as well. The Ocean of Storms then is this much larger region over here. Of course, all of the seas and oceans have names. They're not filled with liquid water, but they were briefly filled with liquid billions of years ago, when the interior of the moon was still liquid magma. Big craters caused by large comets and asteroids during the era of late bombardment, they pierced the rocky crust of the moon and left the liquid lava flow out, which then solidified into this kind of darker solid rock. The paler parts of the moon are simply paler because they haven't been rejuvenated by fresh magma washing over them, which is really what happened to the other parts of the moon when they were pierced by comets and asteroids. So we can see here, we'll come back to the half moon, we can see here that the lower part of the moon here, this highland, is covered in cracks and craters. We can see a load of them there thanks to the striking shadows that they cast, and we can see if we move through here, all of this is cracks and craters, all of this white part. But when the shadow is lying across these darker areas, even with the craters highlighted by their shadows, we can see there is far fewer of them. And that's because the older craters from before the heavy bombardment, they're still here in the uplands where we can see all of that texture, but they've been wiped away here in these seas and oceans and bays, these lowlands of the moon. So that's one of the reasons why various moon landings have landed in the darker areas. It's smoother, easier to traverse terrain. So we can see there the moon as we move through the phases, as we push through the month. We can see it coming pretty close to Saturn there as it comes up to a half. We're still a little ahead of a half here. We'll move forward a little bit. 49.5%, that's pretty close to a half. And as we saw with the full moon, we don't get exactly 100%. We don't get exactly 50% or exactly 0% either. We can see here moving into the morning, the moon has joined the morning planets, so it will be out of the way for stargazing in the evening. And we can see the moon not getting too close to Jupiter and Venus there, but certainly being in the same region. But it's also getting much older. The age of the moon, its phase is now just this waning crescent here, is very small. Obviously that's a lot harder to see, even if it was truly dark against the orangey yellow glow of the sunrise. It's going to be even trickier, but it is there with those planets as we move later in the month. And once we get through to the end of the month, the last few days of the month, the moon is out of the sky entirely, so we can be in with a slightly better chance of seeing meteors in particular. I mentioned in some of the previous videos the meteor shower that's coming up at the end of the month. I will revisit it once we get to the end of the month, but having this sky without any moon in it, even if we are in the city, it's going to help you see more things. The light of the moon still has an effect. It has even more of an effect, of course, if we're out in the countryside. So we can see here, nice clear view of the Milky Way. We are past the summer solstice, so even though, by late July the sky is pretty much at absolute nighttime, once we're around physical midnight, there may still be a little bit of a glow in the north, especially if you're closer to the northern parts of Ireland, or if you're anywhere further north on the globe. But if you're reasonably closer to the equator, closer than Ireland especially, and you're in a dark sky, the moon will be completely out of the way once we're through to the end of the month. And we can see moving into the morning, we have a little bit of that edge of the Milky Way, but it's disappearing pretty quickly as the sun comes up. So we have a reasonable view of the Milky Way's center, if you are in a perfectly dark sky. We can see that core coming up reasonably early in the evening and disappearing. Well, this would be appearing just as it comes to due south there. So we're seeing it pretty much at its best, but not for a very long time. It goes back under the horizon. If we move back to our night of the full moon, we can see that the full moon is very close to the core of the Milky Way. They're not in exactly the same place, but they are very close together. And that's because we're seeing the glow of the Milky Way pretty much in the south, and the full moon goes past the south. We see the full moon close to the south when it's at its highest, when it's at its fullest, when those things come together. So we can see the moon definitely being an issue there for the middle, early to mid part of the month. But once we get into the later part of the month, the moon is still there and the light of the moon will still have an effect. But that almost half moon, slightly more than half moon, it's reflecting a lot less light than the full moon. And in fact, you can see it down here, the age is being given and the phases. So yeah, that's waning gibbous because it's still a little bit more than the half. Third quarter, because that's a half, and we can see it's increasing in age as we get to the waning crescent there. Once the moon reaches 29.5 days old, it passes in front of the sun. So that's how we talk about the phases of the moon when we're not just saying, waning gibbous, waxing gibbous, half, quarter, all of those things. It's in days of age. A 1 day old moon is when the moon has just come out from in front of the sun. So we can see there we're not at the fullest point. There we go, the fullest that we're getting to see, and we're seeing it there at 14.9 days old. So not quite exactly halfway through the 29.5 day cycle. And of course that makes sense because we're not seeing it at exactly 100% full. So that's the moon, of course, one of the most prominent objects in the night sky. That's specifically how the moon is going to look for this latter part of July as we move from the full moon to the increasingly less full moon for the rest of the month. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like it. If you enjoyed this kind of content, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you see more of it. You can also read some of this information on my website, queevinscontent.ie. Don't forget to ask questions as well. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and hopefully I'll answer them in a future video. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you back here next time.